Greetings, my name is Clint Fleetwood, and this is my first tutorial on Godot game engine. I've been using Godot for about 6 months. I already have a game that is about to be put on the market called Sentinels of Eshall using Godot, and I built a hex module, HexGrid module for that game, and I'd like to share it with everyone and give you a tutorial on how to use it. It actually will go over some other basic stuff from Godot, and yeah, so let me just go ahead and get started with this. First, let me say that you can get the module from right here, GitHub CE Fleet Hex module, and I'll put it in the comment section of the video. Also, another thing, we need to make sure that most of the reference and most of my information I got came from this website, Red Blob Games, Grids, Hexagons. It's a plethora of information. If you have any questions about how I got to something or did figure out something, it mostly comes from this site, and this is my primary source of reference. So it's great. There's a lot of information that you can go through and figure out things from there. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you basically the engine, or the grid engine. If you haven't used Godot before, there's plenty of tutorials on the basics of using Godot and how to use Godot, so I don't really need to go over that. If you haven't used Godot before, then you should check out Games from Scratch. They have a great Godot tutorials that helped me a lot when I was getting started. But as you can see right here, I have also, this is a custom build because it is a module. You do have to use the module. If you don't know how to use the modules, you'll need to build it from a source. And the one thing I've done slightly wrong is the folder name. When you clone my repository, it's hex modules, but inside of your module folder, the folder just needs to be named hex lowercase, and that way, because that's what it actually is not right there. No, not right there either. Sorry. Yeah, right here. That has to be the name of the folder. So you could either change that, or you can just change the folder name to hex, and that would fix that issue. Alright, so anyway, as you can see, what I have right here is a simple scene that's set up, and it's the basis for a new game that I'm going to be working on. We haven't come up with a name for it yet, but it is going to be using a HexGrid system, and so this is kind of the early prototype of that, and this is what I have. So all I have here is the world, which is a 3D spatial, and a camera, and then a map grid. That's a HexGrid type, and you could easily add just a new map grid right here if you have compiled correctly. It will show up right here when you click that, and so you can just click right there and create a new hex grid, and it's just there for you to use. One of the things that's cool about creating modules is, and I was not aware of this, is if you do a search for hex grid, it actually has all my functions here. I didn't write this, but it was compiled, and the system that compiles and creates Godot does this for you. So as you can see, their names are pretty self-explanatory of what it does, and this is what I have right now. Just a little caveat: the A* does not work at this time. It actually had to use it from a plugin instead of the module because of some of my C++ problems that I was having. But other than that, it pretty much works exactly as expected. So we don't need that, so we're going to delete that one right there. Alright, so let's go back. And so what we have is under the map grid is just this draw, which is immediate geometry. This is pretty much completely copied from one of the demos in the Godot demo repository thing. And so this demo, it was the navigation mesh. So if you want to know how I figured out how to create a lines, this is how you do it in the 3D space. Now this grid can work in 2D or 3D, and I'll explain the difference. Actually, defaultly it would just come out natively working in 2D. But with 3D, when you're drawing in space, instead of a vector 2, you use a vector 3. And so what I do is I just put 0 as the y index. So it would be x 0, and then it would use the y as the z. And so what that does is it puts it flat on the map. With 2D, you don't have to worry about that in drawing it. But you'll see that when we get to that point. That may be a little confusing. Maybe getting ahead of myself. All right. So what I've done here is I've created a simple little script to show you how the map grid works. Most of this really has to do with the drawing, as opposed to the actual just using the map grid. Actually, the only thing that has to do with the map grid is actually right here. And so you have the hex grid size, which this is on the size the grid will be. This will set the rows and the columns, and the layout is either flat or pointy. And there's a default map. If you don't do any of this, if you could actually comment out all of this, and it will still create a map for you. But it may not be helpful. You really want to use this to change it. Actually, let's go ahead and just show you what it looks like when you get rid of have all the defaults. And this actually just gets the map. This is a function from the hex grid, gets map, which is an array. So we're going to just grab, it gets the map, and so it sets it as a map for you. And then we're going to just draw the grid and see what it does. Push play. There it goes. So that's the default grid. As you can see, the camera position isn't good for this one, because that actually, I think the size is actually 2.5, and so when you're drawing it in 3D space, it ends up being in 3D 2.5. If you're doing it in 2D, it ends up being 2.5 pixels, I think. Actually, I don't know. Just test it out and try. But we're in a 3D space, so it's operating a little differently. But let's go ahead and instead of overriding, let's override some of the defaults. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the size 0.3 units in 3D space, and make it 10 rows, 10 columns, and make it flat. So when you do that, you see it just draws it out like that. Now the module itself does not draw. That's what I've actually written right here. Is these draw functions are all right here. And in these draw functions, you actually will have a couple different ones. I have to draw the hex and then draw the edge, and really it just uses the immediate geometry type, and draws it, using. For me, it reminds me of using a canvas in JavaScript. But basically you just draw, you add a vertex, and then you go to the next one and you end it to draw each edge. So that's not built into the module, but that's, as you can see, the functions are pretty easy to draw the hex and draw the edges for each hex. But you can reset, you can change the rows and the columns. So let's say if we set 45 rows, and it's really long and deep like that, or you can set the column to 1 if you want, just a 1 edge row, and so it's a pretty intuitive and pretty easy to use as far as that goes. You can actually set it to pointy right here, and as you can see, it's facing up instead of down. My camera is not exactly straight, so it's a little angled. That's not the map, that's just not the angle of my camera. You can also create the sizes to be different. So if we have like this, it'll look narrow. Now that's not very helpful for 3D, because with 3D you can move the camera around, but with 2D that's actually a way of making it look perspective if you need to. You can create it so it looks like it goes back. If you're trying to make it like a battlefield or something, that's really helpful in 2D to do that. In 3D it's almost best to just keep them all the same size. 2D. Nice and small. Let's see. Okay. So that's kind of the basic of what you can do here with that. Now the other thing you can do is you can actually draw each line over time, and I'll show you that right here. The draw map over time is actually what it does is it draws it like that over each frame. It draws each hex. That's using the fixed process. And you can actually set the time to be a delay if you want. But what this shows is actually you could actually use some other algorithms. If you wanted to make an algorithm where it kind of starts here and then circles around, you could use a similar algorithm to populate this grid with other stuff. And so instead of using a draw command like I have here with this type of algorithm, you could actually use a set a tile, or set a an object in each hex, if that's something that you'd want to do. You could actually make the hex completely invisible as well, so you can't really see the lines, but the characters actually move in that way. So there's a lot of different options you can do with this, and this is just kind of the basis. But that's really kind of all I have right now. So this is my first tutorial, and it's not really as much of a tutorial as it is just kind of showing you what I've done and showing you how you can use this in Godot. And you can see it's very, very quick, and it's pretty speedy. So if you have any questions, definitely just hit me up in the comments, and I'd love to chat with you about it. And I'd love some feedback on if you think this was helpful, useful, or you think I'm not very good at this. Either one's fine. Thank you for your time, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks. Also, if you thought this tutorial was helpful, I have a Patreon account, and the more support I get on the Patreon, the more tutorials I'll make and continue making. I also teach kids how to make video games. That's my primary business. So this information is used to help teenagers and preteens and even 7 and 8-year-olds make their video games and learn digital art and animation and programming. So if you'd like to help me out with there, please visit my Patreon account, and you can look through the rewards and see if you'd be interested. Thank you for your time.